All right, welcome back to Built for Profit, guys. I am thrilled today to have Mr. Dan with me on the call. He's calling in from Birmingham, Michigan. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. Love it. We were just talking about his large family that I'm sure we'll chat about here in just a minute as well. And he specializes in triple net lease deals, which I can't wait to talk about that as well. So, Dan, number one, welcome to the podcast. And number two, if you want to just kick us off by just saying, who is Dan and how did you get into the world of real estate?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate you having me here. I'm excited to be here, chat a little bit about real estate, net lease investment sales, and I'm sure a whole lot of other things. So I got my start in real estate way back in 2005, so just over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I was always a sales guy. I've always been passionate about people and sales and just interacting with all different types of people. At the time, I had started a business with some friends called Disability Made Easy, which
Okay.
still is a barrier-free home modification company. It's still in existence, run by two of my best friends. We
Wow.
started the business because their father was diagnosed at the time with ALS, which is known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It is, a progressive degenerative disease that is a terrible disease for someone to deal with.
Yeah.
In addition to the difficulties of managing the disease, we watched my best friend's father deal with having to, modify his home and manage many different contractors installing grab bars and ramps and roll-in showers and stair glides and all different types of home modifications, and it was
Yeah.
quite a headache to deal with. So we started this company to help manage that type of problem that he was dealing with. I did all of the sales and marketing, and my kind of aha moment that really catapulted me into real estate was one day I was out on a trip with our project manager, and we were driving to a property to put out a bid to
Yeah.
modify the home and make it handicap accessible. We got there. There was the individual and his sister. They lived together. The individual was in a wheelchair. We went into the property, looked around for a few minutes, walked out to the van, and I was ready to get back in and leave. And I saw the project manager take out his sketch pad, and I looked at him and said, "What are you doing? Let's go. Like, there's nothing that we can do here. This is a lost cause."
Yeah.
I was, a young 20 something guy. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. He didn't say anything. He just sketched out, took about 90 seconds with his graph paper and his pencil. He sketched out a brand new front elevation and layout to the home, because he knew that he could make some changes to the property and make it, better equipped, I should say, to meet the needs of the individual that was living there. And it
Cool.
kind of struck me and really profoundly that I recognized and I realized that you could make changes to a piece of real estate and add tremendous value to whoever lived there or to a potential new owner.
Yeah.
So, fast forward a few years, it became time for me to buy my first home for my family, my growing family at the time, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I remember this was, mid recession. So you'll see by the numbers that I'm going to share, the prices at the time were quite repressed. I was looking at a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, all brick, ranch with a full basement. And I found one for $175,000, move-in ready condition. And I had an offer out on the property. I was ready to sign the contract. And I had heard that just a few streets over, there was a bank-owned property, very similar, all brick ranch, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, full basement, that needed a lot of work. It was in distressed condition, that I could buy for $81,000 cash. And I
Wow.
decided to go with the second property. And I hired out a crew to renovate the entire property. I hired out actually individual contractors for every step of the process. And I told them, "Hey, I'm going to pay you a little bit more, but I want to stick around the property and I want to learn everything that you do. I want you to show me what you're doing so I can learn from you, can learn
Cool.
each trade. I can learn, how to manage the project." And that became my entry into, what I call the gateway drug of real estate, which is
Yeah.
house flipping, right? And
Yeah.
and that's really how I got my start in real estate, was buying my first home, renovating it, living in it for a few years, house hacking, selling that house. And as I did that, I bought another house, renovated, you sold it, another house, another house, another house. That's really how I got my start in real estate.
Wow. Well, Dan, I love that story of just like, I love just your boldness to be able to like tell these contractors and hire that out to be like, hey, I'm willing to pay you more, whatever, just so I can learn this because I'm interested in it. And I think there's a potential here. And I think there's so much power behind just being disciplined enough to kind of go in and talk to those guys and be like, all right, I'm gonna kind of watch over your shoulder and see what you're doing so I can understand what's going on. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, I guess, obviously house flipping and doing that for a while. And then how did you get into maybe the commercial side or what you're doing today?
Yeah, so at the time I was always flipping houses on the side. It was always a little side hustle. I was a development director after I did the, Disability Made Easy. Actually, after I did was involved in Disability Made Easy, I was a development director at a large Jewish day school, doing
Sure.
fundraising, so also sales related, flipping houses on the side. I knew at that point that I wanted to kind of shift more full time into real estate. I wasn't ready yet, so I
Yeah.
got a job running a sales department at a local title insurance agency. I
Okay.
figured the title was an aspect of real estate that was elusive to most people. It was an
Yeah.
essential part of pretty much all real estate transactions, but it was a
Yeah.
part of real estate transactions that very few people knew about. So I figured if I could sharpen my skills in that area, I'd be more valuable as a practitioner of real estate. So
Yeah.
again, I stepped into a sales role, but I stepped into a sales role where I could learn about another aspect of real estate. Did that for a while, and I continued to flip houses on the side. Eventually, I took another sales role at Amazon as a business
Okay.
development executive, and I continued to flip houses on the side. And at that point, I was approached by a local commercial real estate firm, brokerage firm, that approached me asking if I was interested in a brokerage position. They were looking for high producing sales executives to kind of port them over to commercial brokerage. I was
Yeah.
very interested in the opportunity. At that point, I kind of had a crossroads in my life. I could choose between going full time into house flipping or going full time into commercial brokerage. I kind of scratched my head for a while, wasn't sure what to do. I was a little bit scared at the time of, the fact that I had a family, had responsibilities. Commercial brokerage, offered no salary. It was 100% commission. I already had something going where I was churning houses and making a little bit of money. I
Yeah.
decided to step full time into house flipping. I did that for a few years, bought some trucks, bought some jackhammers and floor
Oh,
sanders
wow.
and,
Okay.
diesel trucks and dump trailers, and really started going with that. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of work. It was a very, very labor intensive. My boots were definitely on the ground, running around. I've got tons of crazy stories and situations I'll never forget, and I'll also never do again.
Yeah.
And eventually, I decided that I had enough of that, and I transitioned full time into commercial brokerage. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, and I
Okay.
really never looked back. I flipped the occasional house here or there, kind of got out of that business and really firmly planted myself in the commercial real estate brokerage space, and I've really loved it ever since.
Yeah, I love that, Dan. I'm curious, like, as you were going through flipping houses and obviously diving into the deep end, basically running that for multiple years, any part of your was it always a flip game, or did you ever kind of buy and hold any of those properties as well?
I did hold one.
Okay.
I did hold one. I bought the property. It was in the city of Detroit. I was doing a lot in the city of Detroit at the time. The city of Detroit was several years behind the rest of the country in the foreclosure crisis, and in pricing. So, we are seeing a lot of bank-owned properties trickle out into the market many years later than they were in the suburbs and in other parts of the country. A lot of opportunities and deals, a lot more risk as well.
Yeah.
Coming to market many years later. So I was able to buy properties in the city of Detroit for, substantially less than really you could anywhere else in Michigan, especially. And I did hang on to one property and rent it to one of the guys that was working for me, held it for about a year. And at a certain point, I just kind of said, you know what? Let me put this thing out on the market at a kind of like a, lack of a better term, an FU number.
Yeah, yeah,
If somebody's willing to bite at that number, I'm willing to sell. And, trying to think back to the exact numbers, but we had a multiple offer situation and it
wow,
ended up selling for, you know, $10 or $15,000 more than that. So
wow.
happily got rid of the property and got rid of, of that headache. And that was kind of the moment where I had already been in commercial real estate brokerage for about a year or 18 months and my career was already taking off. And it was just, I think kind of the sign that I needed that was just like, okay, this is exactly where I need to be in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Okay, so, now you're obviously in the commercial space. So kinda talk us through ideal clients, like, who do you serve? Like, what are you looking for? What kind of deals are you doing? Kinda talk through what y'all's life looks like now.
Yeah. So, ideal client, I mean, is most of the people that I deal with are, I mean, it does vary, but high net worth individuals. It really could be anybody, anywhere from someone who owns, let's say one net lease property to an entire portfolio of 20, 30, 40, 50 properties or more. Uh, If we're looking on the sell side in terms of the clients that I service, I would say 85 to 90% of my business is list side business. Most of my clients that I represent are sellers. Now, granted, when I list a property, I'd say about 80% of the time I also represent the buyer.
Okay.
But in terms of the actual origins of the transaction, in most cases, most of my business is list side business. So, those individuals, like I said, anywhere from one property to 20, 30, 40 or more properties. I've sold to, anywhere from someone who's buying for the first time, although that is relatively rare, all the way to, large real estate investment trusts that have billion-dollar portfolios. So it
Yeah.
really does vary, which is fun because I get to work with individuals who have relatively little experience, and I'm in a much more of an advisory role to
Yeah.
huge institutions who have machines and committees and processes, and there's very a small amount of advisory role that I have.
Yeah, I love that. And are you doing this in a specific location or kind of all over, or what's kind of your footprint?
Yeah, the United States of America.
I love it. Okay. I was curious about that. No, that's so good. And I'm curious do you specialize in a certain type of retail space or like kind of walk us through what do you kind of just say like anything that's commercial or do you kind of niche down in any area?
So most of what I do is single tenant net lease investment sales. So think, pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS's, quick service restaurant like Taco Bell's, Burger King's,
Cool. Yeah.
McDonald's. I do a lot of shopping centers, right?
Okay.
So anything from your small neighborhood, 10,000 square foot, 5 to 8 tenant small shopping center, all the way up to a 200,000 square foot, 15 or 20 tenant shopping center. I
Okay.
do a lot of medical office buildings, both single tenant, one tenant medical office building to, multi-tenant, 10 or 15 tenant medical office building. I've sold resorts before. Those are more one-offs for clients who I've sold other properties for who also have resorts in their portfolio. A lot of discount retailers like dollar stores. I would say that comprises the majority of the types of products that I sell.
Yeah, that's great. And are you also on the responsibility side of like finding the tenant to like sign that 10-year lease or whatever? Or are you coming in after the fact once they already have that lease signed?
So the vast majority of what I do is investment sales. So, representing buyers and sellers in the purchase and sale of these
Mm.
assets. However, occasionally I will do lease work. That comes into play mostly in two scenarios. One scenario would be, I can think right now I have several vacant former pharmacies listed for sale. So
Yeah.
in those cases, we'll also list them for lease. So we'll put the building on
Okay.
the market for sale if somebody wants to buy it, but also have it for lease in the event that a tenant would want to lease the space.
Yeah.
The second scenario would be, let's say we have a short-term deal that's listed for sale. I did one last year. It was an industrial building, about 18 months left on the lease. We had it listed for sale. We found a buyer. Buyer said, we want to buy the deal. We're willing to pay X price. However, we need a lease extension negotiated. We then stepped in, negotiated a lease with the tenant for an additional, I believe in that case, 6 years. So we were involved on both the extension of the lease as well as the negotiation of the sale of the building as well.
Yeah, no, that's very, very cool, Dan. I love that. And so kind of talk to me a little bit about like what are you dreaming about? What does 5 to 10 years look like? I know and happy to dive in a little bit right now as well. You mentioned earlier that you have 6 kids, which I just love so much. And so anyway, kind of tell us what you're dreaming about a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do find myself so involved in the day to day that it's difficult to think that far in the future. However, I think I know that it's important. It's definitely an important thing and something that I'd like to devote more time to. So I appreciate you bringing that up. For me, I'd like to have ownership in physical tangible real estate. I've invested retirement funds in passive real estate deals, which maybe that's the better option for me because I love what I do as a broker and I'm good at it, and that seems to work for me. So maybe that is the better path. I've seen a lot of brokers. I just had a conversation with a broker who I work with, who I respect very much, and he mentioned to me that him and his colleagues have pivoted back towards brokerage away from property ownership
Oh, really?
because property ownership has pulled them away from brokerage in a very negative way. So,
Yeah.
maybe, as I speak this out to you, maybe the way I've been doing it is the right way to do it. Maybe focusing on what works and investing passively in letting other people do the work is the answer for me. I think that I don't have an answer for you. I think that
Yeah,
I will continue to do what works for me, and I'll investigate ways to, invest in things that work as well. Uh, family wise, I think that, I mean, that's an exciting thing to think about. My older children will be, potentially at the age that they're going to be starting their own families. So that's definitely hard for me to believe. I myself am 42 years old. So in 5 to 10 years, I'll be in my early 50s. That's insane. So,
yeah,
you know, my my oldest daughter could be, she could be in 10 years, she could be, having children. So
pretty
I could be a
wild.
grandfather, which is also hard to believe. Time has definitely flown by. So I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to those chapters, to seeing how life is. I think that hopefully I'll have slowed down a little bit, and I'll be able to enjoy the next chapters of increase in family. That's the thing about having a big family, is that it multiplies. So those
Yeah,
6 kids, even if they only have 2 kids
yeah,
each,
that's right.
that's another that's 12 grandkids,
Yeah,
right?
so true, Dan. Well, to go to your earlier point, I've heard it so many times, time and time again, whether it's books I've read, podcasts I listen to, whatever, is that, and I think you're onto something with you talking about staying in the brokerage lane, because what I've heard time and time again is the wealth creation machine is stay in your lane in the money printing thing that you're really, really good at. And then don't get distracted by shiny object syndrome, but stay in that lane of things that you're really good at that prints
Yeah,
money. And then use that additional margin from what you're really, really good at to then go invest in assets that create more money, right? That you don't have to
absolutely,
make your distractions from. And so
absolutely.
I think you're very much onto something there. And I think, yeah, it's honestly something that I have to challenge myself on all the time as well, because I fall into that shiny object syndrome sometimes. And I'm like, this could be an awesome opportunity, but I just, like your friends were talking about, you get into the ownership game and now you're pulled away all the time because you're having to go deal with the ownership game now of something else that maybe is pulling you away from your bread and butter of how you make money.
100%. I mean, I know that for myself personally, I used to be someone who suffered massively from shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
and I know that the more that I've been able to reel that in, and it's never going to go away. I always have the desire; it's always there. But it's the more space that I've been able to give myself between the temptation and like that pause, and then okay, temptation is there, but I'm not going to give into it, right?
Yeah.
The more success I've seen. Like, here's a great example from this past year. I love gold and silver. I love it. I've always loved gold and silver. And I've been fortunate enough to invest in gold and silver.
Yeah. Good for
And
you.
I last year when I was investing gold and silver, I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I could buy some and sell a little bit, and like, I'm could broker gold and silver and this and that. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, and I did a little bit here and there, and made a few $100 here, $300 there. And I thought about it, and I said, if this is fun, like basketball is fun, that's one thing, right? But if this is something to make money, it's a waste of time, right? Because it doesn't make money like brokerage makes
That's
money,
right. That's
right?
exactly.
So it hit me. I had to say, it's literally and figuratively a shiny object.
Yeah.
So I've noticed for myself that the more I've been able to reel that in and not engage in that distraction that is that shiny object syndrome, the more successful I become.
Yeah, Dan, that is such a good way to say it. Is it fun or is it a income replacement? And you have to
Yeah.
think about it that way to say, like,
If
what
it's
is
fun,
my
it's okay.
that's
It's
right.
okay.
If it's a hobby that gives you energy, yeah, continue to do it, right? But no, that is a great way to look at it, because you really do, as any owner, any honestly role that you're in at any company, everybody has to evaluate what is my true cost per hour when I'm working to go produce, right? And so if once you find that out and you're doing all these distractions that aren't even remotely close to that, then it's like, well, shoot, what am I doing with my time? Because that's stealing time away from any of the other things that are important to you, or the hobbies or the families or any of the stuff that you other got going on in your life. So I think that's super, super brilliant. Okay, well, tell us a little bit, Dan, for you. What do you feel like 8 years into the brokerage world? What are the things you feel like you got momentum in right now?
That's a good question. So definitely social media. LinkedIn has been, I would say, one of my strengths. It's something that I've had my ebbs and flows. I think now I'm more in an ebb than a flow. I've been taking some time off. I've had some time where the consistency hasn't been there as much as it has been in the past. But overall, over the last 7 or 8 years, I've for the most part, had daily posting, which has helped me.
Yeah.
I generate a lot of business from LinkedIn. I've made a lot of great connections from LinkedIn. My CPA I met on LinkedIn. We've done a bunch of LinkedIn lives together, and I've met a lot of great people, and I've been referred a lot of business from LinkedIn. So that's been working well for me in my business. I recently read from someone that I respect. They said that you have a really great career and a really great business from 5 good clients. A lot of people think, especially in my business, it's a lot about cold call and grinding and just like massive numbers and this and that. But I can tell you, I've got a few great clients that generate a big portion of my business. And so, that part is definitely going well for me. I definitely would love a few more great clients. So if you're out there watching this, please reach out.
I love it.
So,
Yeah, we'll definitely put your information. We'll actually that at the end of the podcast, and we can get all your information on there so people know where to reach out. But no, that's a
yeah,
great comment, honestly, Dan. I think that's the first time I've ever heard that, and I think there's so much wisdom behind that phrase because I feel like when you're in build mode, you're just constantly after growth, and you just think more is better. It's
yeah,
not always true, and I think
right.
there's just so much wisdom behind saying like, "Hey, if you really hone in on like who your best people are and spoil them and treat them really, really well and serve them well, then that can create a very, very, very good business."
Yeah. Other thing I know for me is that I've looked back at all of my best years in commercial real estate brokerage, and they all have one thing in common, and that is that they all have at least one monster deal,
Yeah.
right? So I've found that it's so much easier. I mean, this is so simple, makes so much sense, but it's so much easier to have a great year when you have at least one monster deal, right? I've got a lot of average deals or a lot of small deals, but my great years, I have at least one monster deal. And it makes up in some years, it makes up more than half of my gross, income. So
Yeah.
I think that that's really important as a broker is to make sure that you're chasing, big deals. Honestly, I can tell you the most difficult deals I've ever done in my career are the smallest deals. That's just fact. That is how it works.
Yep. And I couldn't agree more, Dan. I mean, I've seen that time and time again. Same thing in our business, that the most difficult clients that we serve are the ones that pay the least. And I
Yeah.
think that's true in almost every industry. It's just wild how that kind of that truth rises to the top in almost any
Right.
industry. Okay, I want to go back to social media or LinkedIn for just a second. Do you feel like the biggest driver for the connections that you made, the deals that have come your way through LinkedIn, has just been your consistency on a daily basis on that platform, or what do you feel like's the driver there?
Yeah, that's 100% right. Is that, when I started daily posting on LinkedIn, I had one singular goal, and that was that when someone this is a metaphor, but what I wanted was I wanted that if someone were to walk into a room and say, "Hey, who is the person that I need to speak with about net lease brokerage?" I wanted everyone in the room to say Dan Lewkowicz. That's
Yeah,
it. If they said net lease brokerage, who's the guy? Dan Lewkowicz. Now the room obviously is LinkedIn, right? But it transcends LinkedIn, right? Because if someone then leave the LinkedIn platform and they're in a cocktail party or they're in an elevator or they're in a WhatsApp chat, wherever they are, they know of me from LinkedIn, right? But they're
yeah,
still going to give the same answer. So I've gotten a few referrals, last year from people that said, "Hey, I'm in a commercial real estate WhatsApp group." And I said, "Hey, I need somebody for a few, triple net properties." And 7 different people said Dan Lewkowicz. None of those people knew me, but they knew of me from LinkedIn,
yeah,
right? I was at the mall last week and somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, I know you from LinkedIn. I've been following you for a few years." I get that in a lot of places that I go. So that constant presence is working, right?
yeah,
People recognize me in person and people recognize my name in other situations because I'm constantly putting out content and they have that association. Oh, he's that net lease guy, right?
yeah,
That's what I wanted. I wanted to get my name out there and I wanted to be associated with net lease as a net lease broker and as a thought leader so that when somebody needed something in the net lease space, even if they didn't need it, but somebody else needed it by association, they could say, "Oh, Dan's the guy to call."
yeah. That's so good, Dan. I love that. I think there's so much power in just the consistency there
Yeah.
and doing it for long periods of time. Like you said, like
Yeah.
I've been doing for multiple years, and so I
And
think that's nice.
it's not just there's two parts to this I'll share, and this is not just for brokers, okay? So in any industry that relies on cold calling, right? It could be brokerage, it could be financial services, you could be a CPA who's doing outreach, whatever it is, right? I'm not going to say don't cold call because there's definitely value there. But
Yeah,
cold calling is always going to be at best a one-to-one, methodology, right?
yeah,
If someone picks up the phone, it's going to be one-to-one, you to them.
that's right.
Social media is one to almost infinity, right? It's
That's
it's
right.
one to whoever's out there. Could be hundreds of thousands of people looking at your post at any given time.
Yeah,
So you can augment the fact that you're at best going to reach one person in a cold call by posting on social media and reaching potentially hundreds of thousands of people. So get in that room that's potentially has hundreds of thousands of people, whether you're a broker or you're providing financial services or you're, a CPA, whatever you're doing, my advice is take advantage of that and start now because the network effect compounds. I started 7 or 8 years ago. I wish I started 15 years ago, right? You can't go back in time and start 7 or 8 years ago.
that's right.
But if you wait another month or another 3 months or another year, you're also not going to be able to go back in time. So just start today. Don't do it. You don't have to do it every day if you don't want to. Do it once a week, but
Yeah,
start and keep going, keep doing it because you need to build that name recognition. I'm telling you, there is a social currency that's out there waiting for you to grab it. It's really an incredible opportunity that I just I can't speak strongly enough about.
yeah, Dan. Oh, excuse me, Dan. I love that so much. I think there's so much wisdom and power behind what you just mentioned, and just the consistency of just starting today and building a rhythm behind it. Because I fully agree. I love the room analogy that you talked about. I think that is so brilliant. Okay, on the flip side of that, I'm curious. Like, what's the biggest bottleneck right now that you're trying to break through? What's the thing that's like, this is what I wake up thinking or focused on or problem solving in?
So it's really two things right now. Number one is CRM. So I have a CRM. The last 4 years, I probably opened it up 15, 20 times and it's my own fault.
Yeah,
I've gotten so busy with deals that I'm just constantly running with the deals and not logging things. So I made a big, resolution to essentially interview different CRMs and take notes and figure out what I'm going to do. And I think I made a decision. So that's high on my list. I'm porting over things and going to jump into a new CRM. And then the other is admin. I'm working with an agency. I got a new admin. The first one didn't work out. Second one started to work out. Currently not working out. Interviewing a third one. So really, putting those two tools in place, new CRM, new admin. I'm hopeful that when those two tools are in place, it's really going to help me. I know my strengths. I'm great at sales. I love interacting with people. Can benefit from enhanced organization.
yeah,
So those two tools, CRM, admin, can help with that.
yep.
And hopefully together, we can thrive.
No, I love that, Dan. And there's one book that I just have fallen in love with and reread multiple times. It's called Buy Back Your Time. It's actually by a
Okay.
guy named Dan Martell. But he has a whole chapter based on the power of having an assistant, an assistant that knows you and understands you. And it's basically a playbook for that. And it is just so super, super, super powerful. So add it to your list if you haven't read it yet, because I think it'll open your eyes to a lot of different things of the power behind having that partner with you that is organized like you're not organized or just the opposite of how you operate. And it is just super, super powerful.
Yeah,
So
I'll check that one out.
I love it, Dan. Well, cool. One last question before we wrap up. I'm curious, is there something that you've kind of over the past 8 years or so developed where there's metrics or KPIs or something that you continue to go back to look at? That is something that if you know that these numbers are good, that you're in a healthy spot.
No, no, there really is not. I'm really a results guy.
Yeah.
I look at my spreadsheet, my end of year results. I think that there's definitely a value in funnel metrics, right? Knowing like, hey, if I'm looking, let's just make up numbers. If I want to get to $1 million of net income, and I know and I'm just making up numbers, 10 deals with an average of $100,000 of net take home commission, right? And in order to get to 10 closed deals, I need 20 listings. In order to get to 20 listings, I need, 100 proposals. And in order to get to 100 proposals, I need 1,000 calls, whatever those numbers are. And, and then you can kind of work backwards.
Yeah.
My business doesn't fit that mold. I don't do, I probably do 5% of the number of proposals of any of the top guys in my office. And I probably do 5% of the number of calls. I probably do, you know, 30 times as much effort and time on social media of anybody in my office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So my business is very different. To try to convert it to the way that the typical commercial real estate broker performs and does their business, I just don't think it would work. So no, there aren't any metrics. Should I do it? Should I try to make it work that way? I don't think so. This is working for me. There are probably ways that I could do things better. I think that the CRM and the admin is
Yeah.
really going to help. But no, there aren't any real metrics that I could look back on, or that I do look back and I say, and to see if I'm on track. It's more, hey, this is my goal for the year of end result, right? Where am I? Oh, we're 1 quarter in. Am I ahead of that? Am I behind that? That's
Yeah.
really what I'm always looking at the end result. That's what I've always done. The one except when I was at Amazon, they were always on our rears, right? To like on all those funnel metrics, how
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
pitches, how many calls, but that was because, that's how they wanted it done,
That's right.
right?
Yeah. That was
I'm my own boss. This is how I do it, for better or worse. But hey, listen, this is working and I'm a lot happier.
Yeah, you got to figure out what's working for you, and something that you'll actually get up and do every day that's going to motivate you to do what you need to do, the 30x on social media, whatever it is. And if
Yeah.
the results driven, just keep doing what you need to do. I love
Right.
that. Well, cool, Dan. Well, I feel like we could talk for hours on this. This is so much fun. But if people want to know more about Dan, know more about your company, where's the best place to find you?
Well, I'm obviously on LinkedIn, so you can first of all find me there. My first name is Dan. That's easy to spell. Last name, not so much. That's Lewkowicz. Again, Dan Lewkowicz. Lewkowicz. I have a new website that's going to be launching very soon. I actually have a podcast. It's a streamcast. Actually, it's video podcast that was recorded in studio. 167 episodes. Pretty cool. danontop.net. Danontop.net. That should be up pretty soon. You can also reach out to me if you want to talk real estate. If you've got a deal you're looking at, you want to chat. If you've got a property that you want to know what it's worth, you're thinking about listing, you want to, discuss value, etc. I'll give out my direct cell phone. It's 248-943-2838. Again, 248-943-2838. Anything I can do to add value would be at my absolute pleasure.
I love it, Dan. We will definitely put all of that information in the show notes so people can easily find you. So thank you so
Awesome.
much for having the conversation today, Dan. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Absolutely.